Making some time to learn a little bit more about using online reports to strengthen customer relationships. My name
Yeah,
is
so
Gregg.
if I could just say, Greg, to start with, I wanted to talk a little bit about these, customer reports and why they're so important, right? Because I think that you and your customers are doing a great job of gathering information, right? We always say if you can't manage what you don't measure, so you and your customers are measuring it now, but the really important part is getting this information to the end user customer. This might be the
Indeed.
property managers, this might be the building owners, but this is where the real value is because oftentimes they're the ones who are spending the money for and expecting the water savings, right? We learned from Dr. Dukes a few weeks ago that if you're spending the money and you're not getting the water savings, you're not going to be happy with the product. So making them understand why and how is really important. And taking us down that road today is Greg Black, the technical sales manager for ET Water. And I think this is interesting, Greg. I've had an opportunity to work with you for about 3 years now. But more importantly, I was your customer for several years when I was at Valley Crest. And I just want to say that for all of you who have not used Greg as a resource, this is something you really want to reach out and do. Greg does a fantastic job with his customers. I know this firsthand. He is not satisfied until you are. If you have an issue, a problem, he will work diligently to fix it and make it better for you. And as a customer, I don't know what else you could want from somebody. So, and then more importantly too, or as importantly, Greg's been working with ET Water since almost the beginning, or since the beginning. He's employee number 3 or something, 2004. He's been doing this. So for somebody who's around that really knows the software, knows how to use it, can solve your hardest problem, right? 80% of the problems are the same, right? Or the issues that we run into. And it's a couple times a year we might run into those really hard ones. Well, Greg can really help you with that. And that's why I want to encourage everybody to use him as a resource. So Greg, I know we've started the season so far and we're off and running. How's it going so far?
Richard, everything is going great. What happens when you put a smart controller on the wall instead of a standard timer is not only you have that cool remote access, you got all the data, you can log in, see what's going on. It helps things tremendously. You're more efficient, your team's more efficient, and you can get the data you need to your customers to impress them and make them happy they made the choices they did. So it's good. I mean, we're busy, right? It's the landscape industry, right? But we're super happy with it so far.
Yeah, and busy is a good word to use right now. I mean, it's been a pretty frenzied pace for a while now, and that's been good. It's the adoption's been strong and increasing this year, so that's been great.
Indeed. Thanks again, Richard, for that nice introduction. I appreciate that. The blush, I hope, wasn't fading out the screen or whatever.
Yeah, you're welcome, and you deserved it. So, all right. So, what do you have for us today?
Richard, today we're going to talk about using online reports to strengthen customer relationships, as it says here on the lead slide. Again, what I said was, you put a smart controller on the wall, you're going to need a way to work with it to access the data, to help your customer understand what's going on, what's important, and how to move things forward. So, Richard, we just have a few slides today. We're going to step through our reports and talk a little bit more. But I'll tell you, the cool thing about ET Water smart controllers is they collect this information, right? And about what's happening on the sites you manage. And that data becomes accessible through what we call the Jain Unity website. So you could say Jain Unity shares useful information that keeps your teams and resources informed, as well as showing data that helps strengthen your customer relationships, right?
So I just had a quick question, Greg. I'm sorry to interrupt, but a couple things. So everyone who subscribes to Jain Unity gets these reports.
Everybody, yes, sir.
And then Jain Unity is the software that runs the Smart Box controller
Yes.
and the Hermit Crab and the Hermit Crab Pro that's coming out. Um, is it basically the same ET Water software?
It is basically the same. We thought it made more sense, depending on the hardware you put on the wall, it's got to be the same interface, the same information, the same data presented to you on your Jain Unity website, because it's like, why confuse everybody, right? Keep it the same, keep it simple, keep it easy to configure, right? So that whatever device is hanging on the wall is operating kind of optimally for you and your customer.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. I just, yeah, I know a few people have asked me about that. Just wanted to clarify.
Perfect, thank you. So as we've said, to kind of get going with this, all you need is the ET Water controller you see here. You put that on all your properties, and then you need a web browser to access the Jain Unity website. Now, quick note about the Jain Unity website. There's no need to visit an app store to get this. There's no need to download specialized software or buy computers designed for irrigation management. Literally, Richard, all you need is the controller and any device that can access the internet. Your smartphone, your tablet, whatever you have handy is going to work just fine. I want to make that point. So with that in mind, how do we use the Jain Unity reports to address the things your customer is worried about? So here's our favorite list of the 6 typical customer concerns. Customer concern number 1, hey, are we going to be on budget? Concern number 2, are we using too much water? Is the landscape healthy? Number 4, how does the landscape look? Number 5, often forgotten, is anything going to bother the tenants, right? And the last one that the property managers are concerned with, any surprises this year? Is there anything you can foresee that's going to be happening? So these 6 customer worries tie back to the information that appears on the website. So in fact, the dashboard view that you see here has all of the real-time information, Richard, about all your ET Water controllers and properties that you manage. Data you see here can impact your property and your customer relationship today. So I just wanted to step through a little example. So it's 5 a.m., Richard. You're trying to organize your crews on their routes. You look at your smartphone and you see, hey, wait a minute, valve shorts are a problem, right? So you click on that one time and you see the information necessary to deal with this problem, right? So this right there in a nutshell is really the power of the system. Log into the dashboard, see what the controllers are reporting, understand where the problems are. 1 click or 2 clicks, and boom, you can go right into that actionable information you need for your team to be successful in the field.
So Greg, I have a couple questions here, and I just first want to remind everybody that the chat is open as well as the Q&A. So if you have questions or comments that you'd like to make, add them to the Q&A or the chat, and I'll be sure to work them into the conversation. So I'm looking at this page at 5 in the morning on my phone, my tablet, my laptop, my desktop, whatever. And so I can see, is this correct, the site? So this would be the HOA or the commercial building that I'm managing,
right.
what the controller is, the station and the alert type. Now, it's the same alert type. Am I always going to see valve short?
You're not. You could see valve opens, you could see high flows, you could see rain sensor activations. You can see all kinds of things. Again, the smart controller you have on the wall is really smart. It's reporting up a lot of different conditions or alarms on site. And this is just one example of how we can really drive the information to the user so that they can be successful with the data.
Yeah, so this is really cool. I like it, but I'm a busy guy. I don't want to have to open up the computer and look at every site every morning. If there's an alert, am I going to find out about it some other way, or am I just going to find out about it when the property manager calls me?
Yeah, right. What they call. No, Richard, we set up, when you log in and create your account with Jain Unity, you automatically get all of our email alerts. So if there's a short condition, we'll let you know. If there's a high flow, we'll let you know. If there's a problem, we'll just shoot it right over to your inbox, right? This report here is a way of summarizing the types of data that are active for your various sites so that you can apply resources or time if you need to fix stuff.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Because in the old days, the way I used to find out about it is when they got the bill.
Hello?
And they would see the huge water bill and they'd say, there's a break and you haven't told me. And then they'd try to make me pay for it.
Exactly, exactly. So now we have a little bit of a stopgap here where we have information about what's going on at all the sites. Remember, I used to have to drive a guy around in a truck to figure out what's happening and what's not happening on site. So this is pretty powerful. But here on this screen, it's interesting that the same error condition for the same station on the same site has occurred 2 times. So if the temperatures are trending up, Richard, we're going to get hot spots on station 5 and station 24, right? So a valve short's not going to blow the budget. We all know that, but your customer may have a landscape health and appearance issue, right? So this is a good example of using data to make sure there are no issues on site and then leverage that to build some rapport with your customer, right? Here's the little sneaky part about this report, Richard. The other question is this: well, wait a minute, didn't I assign those stations to get fixed the other day? Well, they're not fixed, right? So from your perspective, you've got a resource issue or a training issue or both. Either way, you can use those historical reports to see how well your team is performing. And we think that that's kind of a hidden use of our reporting online. But Richard, you fix it before the customer knows about it, to your point. That's an item you got to share during your next walkthrough. It is never too late to prove that it was a good decision to hire you, right? Well, of course, like you said, if you feel bold, you're the contractor, you want your property manager customer to receive the daily alerts, set them up. It's no problem. You can use that daily alert activity for a more in-depth conversation where you can use the reports to really get into the details.
Yeah, the old rule of thumb, Greg, was if you as a contractor found the problem and reported it, then you could charge for the fix. If the customer found it and reported it and showed that you were neglectful, you usually fix those on your done.
It's true, right? So we can help kind of, tip that in the right direction, if you will. But I tell you, with the knowledge and the information, it now. You can really get on these sites and keep them cleaned up pretty nice. Richard, besides the alert report, Jain Unity has 3 more reports that can generate a lot of value for you. Runtime reports, for example, they just tell you how busy your controller is and if it was on or off on a particular day. It's my favorite report for a quick, kind of like a gut check, right, about how the controller is operating. The next one is called the estimated water usage report. It's cool because it lets you set up gallon per minute information for each station so you can track water usage on your properties without a flow sensor. So that's kind of cool. And then of course, the measured water usage report pairs your controller with a flow sensor to give you true water management on site. And these reports are, pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think so. I'll tell you why, especially like measured water use. For most people, the water they use today, they might be on a 2-month cycle bill. So they might not even, and then bill has to be processed and mailed. So the water you're using today, you might not know how much water you use for 3 months, way beyond when it's time or when to give you the opportunity to change any habit. You're finding out about the water you use in May and June and August and September. And
Indeed.
you just can't adjust to anything for that summer.
No, and then how would you like to tell your property manager that we didn't know for 3 months or 4 months, and it's like it doesn't look you could do better. We could do better, right?
Right.
That's one of the reasons why this is so helpful.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you'll say. Is you'll say, well, I'll try to do better next summer. And that's not going to be as satisfactory as an answer of, hey, look what we discovered today. based on this measured water usage report. And we went out and did a visual inspection, found the problem and fixed it.
Indeed. Yeah, much more powerful. And that's the reason why you can build business with that customer going forward. Use data to create more business opportunities. A quick reminder before we kind of drop into some examples of these reports. They're standard on Jain Unity. You don't have to pay upgrade fee, extra dollars to get access to all the information. They're available to run at any time for anybody who has a valid subscription with Jain Unity. So we're excited about that. This first report is what we call the runtime report, right? It tells you how often the controller is active. Like I said, I use it with my customers as a gut check report, right? How's my controller doing over the last 30 days? How many minutes of irrigation is occurring? You can look for anomalies. That's what I do, right? Consecutive days of really high minutes of irrigation or really low days where no irrigation has occurred at all. Might be a block day, might be a rain day, but it's a good sort of sense of what's going on in the field. So it's a good report. You'll notice, Richard, that we want to be tracking with the ET rate, right? So very generally, when you look at this report, the green bars, right, that signify watering should follow that little blue trend line. The blue line is the ET rate, right? ET shows us, frankly, how much water you're losing from the landscape each day. And as we all know, ET is one of the most important reference points for proper irrigation management. And in fact, Richard, we've had some killer webinars in the past that describe more about ET, how the science works, and how you can use it to your benefit. So we want folks to go back and check out those webinars.
Yeah, I think they should too, because this is the one thing a lot of people don't factor in, and that is ET isn't static. So, a couple of years ago, we had some 100-degree days in May in San Diego. And then the next summer, we were so overcast in May and June and July, we didn't even open the windows until the end of July. So that next summer, I was a super water manager, right? Because we were using a ton less water and I looked like a hero. But, I had to explain to people, I'm not the hero. Mother Nature's the hero this year. It's just cooler. It's colder. ET is lower. So having that reference of ET with the water use is really critical, because then you can see, yep, we used a little bit more water than last year, but look at how much ET went up. So, as a percentage of, we didn't use as much water as the percent ET increase. So this is the way you can really show people their water savings, because as we know from Dr. Dukes, if they don't see it or they don't understand it, they're not going to want to pay for it.
You're spot on with that. One of my bigger customers here in Northern California, when they're talking about smart controllers with their customers, they say, look, Mother Nature programs this thing, right? So right there in a sentence, you get to encapsulate all of the cool variables that impact how fast your landscape's drying out. Of course, Richard, if you want to see details, we can go details on the runtime report, show you minutes of activity per controller, per site, any day you want. But it kind of begs the question, right? Why does your customer care about runtime? It's a standard report, right? Well, here's why. You'll know which stations are most active. So that means you're going to know where the most water is being used and the most money is being spent. And because the controller is frequently turning those valves on and off, a more active station means a greater chance you'll need to replace something. So if your maintenance team is on it, right, and they're staying on top of those active stations, understanding if there's a problem there, it's going to have a bigger impact on the site landscape. And those kind of things they have a tendency to find their way right back to your customer. Runtime helps answer one of those crazy questions we always hear. A tenant calls the property manager. Hey, there's a station on in the middle of the day, or there's something happening over here or over there. The runtime report can really answer that question. Was the station on? Was the station off? Either way, the report will help you out. So the effort here is to kind of set yourself up to have a more meaningful conversation with your customer, right? And the other thing that's going on with the runtime report, it's critical because those minutes of watering is kind of the key ingredient to determine gallons per minute, right? And gallons per minute is the data that really gets everybody's attention. So to address gallons and water usage, we built something called the expected water use report.
Yeah, and I actually have a question coming in right now on this.
Cool.
Greg, yeah, it's from Tim in Cupertino, and he is asking about, is there a way to measure water use, right? We're looking at times, but this could be drip irrigation. And so your runtime might be very long because you're only dripping a half gallon an hour. So is
Indeed.
there a way to measure the gallons, even if you don't have a flow sensor, right? We know a flow
Absolutely.
sensor would measure, but how about in a situation where I don't have a flow sensor?
Absolutely. There is, and that report that we have is called the expected water use report. And I think what I'll do is I'll just take a moment here to step us through kind of how that works. We built it, Richard, because everybody that was installing an ET Water Smart Controller without a flow sensor really wanted to know how many gallons were being used on site, right? And they didn't want to have to remember to read the meter every week. And why did they want to know? Because their customer wants to know about water usage, right? It goes right back to those two main concerns customers have. What's the budget? What's my money situation, right? So calculating gallons per minute, right? And not rocket science, fortunately. It requires almost zero math. All you really need are your eyes and the calculator on your smartphone. But Richard, if you're lucky, you got to remember, if there's a dedicated irrigation meter on site, you can turn on the station for a couple of minutes, 1 minute for the flow to stabilize, 1 minute to watch the dial, and then note the gallons used, right? If you got slopes or long runs, water flow can take a little longer than a minute to stabilize. But if you don't have a meter, look at this screen, right? After you determine water pressure for each station, which is going to be usually the same across a site, count the number of heads, making sure to note the watering pattern. That's the part where people mess it up a little bit. You got to remember a full head uses more water than a quarter spray does, right? Once you know the station nozzles, refer to the manufacturer's performance chart like I have here to learn how much water each nozzle is using. They show you right there. A full head, 20 PSI, 1.34 gallons per minute. So once you know how much output per head, add them all up, and then you're off to the races because you put them into our report. You just enter them here, station by station by station. This is the knowledge that we're using. And then with a little bit of magic, Richard, that's the report you get.
That's pretty amazing. Now, do I have to do this like every week or every month, or how often do I have to do that?
You only do it one time, right? The only time you have to relearn, if you will, the flow rate is if you know you swapped out some heads, you get the spray heads out of there, get the stream sprays in. Maybe you did a spray for drip swap. Maybe you swapped out turf for native, something like that. Then if you think the flow rate's changing, you want to drop in there and edit those flow rates. Otherwise, you don't have to touch it. And presto, there's your water. So we think that that is a pretty powerful report, all without a flow sensor, right? So here's kind of the conversation we'd like you to have with your customer, right? So you can say something like this: Station 18 is the most active station on site. Last year it used, let's say, 423,000 gallons of water, right? And because you pay $5 for every 748 gallons of water used, that station cost you $2,827, right? So you present something like that to your customer using the data on Jain Unity, but then the savvy sales guy is going to have a solution for that scary data, right? They're going to say, look, if you just planted some natives or drought tolerant material, I can save you about half that amount, right? So that's a way to really show how you can have the kind of conversation that's going to move things forward. It's going to be more meaningful, as I've said, but now it's also going to be more profitable, right? You can use our reports to create a sense of urgency so your proposals are reviewed more quickly. And heck, Richard, just download the reports and email them to the customer, right? Let the data tell the story. So it's a pretty powerful way to kind of have a different sort of dialogue with your customer.
Yes, I have a comment and a question. First comment is I love the part about emailing that to your customer. We used to do that. We would make sure our property managers put in the monthly packet to all the board members what the water use report was. And they compare it last year to this year. Property management is a tough job. These property managers are hearing a lot of issues, a lot more issues or problems than they're getting kudos or pats on the back. So when they start to get ahead and you are providing them with the tool that gets them having positive, meaningful relationships with their board members, boy, they appreciate that. So not only do you save water, but you help your customer build a better relationship with their customer. So the other question was on slide 9, Greg. I'm sorry to ask you to go back.
Yeah.
So the person's asking about this flow gallon per minute. So on a 10 full circle nozzle from this manufacturer, if I'm reading this correctly, the flow is 1.64 gallons per minute.
At 30 PSI.
At 30 PSI, which is a pretty normal, right? This is what we have to regulate to. So 30 PSI is in California at least. So that's a pretty good number. 1.6. So if you had 8 heads, you'd be like putting out 13 gallons every minute.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why there's so much agitation, if you would, in the industry to get people away from overhead irrigation and get people into drip, right? It's more efficient, more effective. The plants are happier, less water use. It's kind of a win all the way along. And it's just something we'll continue to work on in our industry.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So a 10-minute runtime of 130 gallons, 140 gallons is what we're putting out. That's a lot of water.
Yeah, you mentioned that, it's an opportunity for the property manager to kind of coach up the board at the HOA. Nobody really understands, right, how much water is flowing through these zones when they're active, right? So it's a really good data point that can kind of help clarify what we're trying to do here. All right, what's the best way to save water? What's the technology to use? What's the payback? And what's everything going to look like afterwards, right? All that stuff kind of comes out in the wash.
Yeah, that's a great report, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah. Sadly, Richard, it's the last report we're talking about now, but it's the most powerful and kind of the coolest, right? We call it the measured water use report. And again, this report is standard on Jain Unity. We use some different colors here. And it tells you water use, right? Actual gallon consumption in terms of scheduled irrigation. That's one bar, that's the blue bar. Manual watering, which is the little green bit there. And then the amount of water lost to leaks and breaks, right? So a reminder, you're going to need a flow sensor installed to get the data for this report. It's also nice, we have a flow sensor to get a master valve as well. So if there's a problem in the field, you can shut the water to the irrigation system, but it's optional. But using this report, there's kind of, there's this, I did 5 cool things, right, to show using this data. So thing number 1, we're either over budget or under budget for site water use. And here's a comparison year over year, right? So one year we were at 342,000 gallons. The next year, 275,000 gallons, right? So in an instant, you can make these kind of comparisons year over year to see how we're doing. Maybe it's something with the crew. Maybe it's something with that drip retrofit that they finally signed off on that kind of drag that water usage back. But that's when it gets kind of exciting, right? To be able to talk about the value represented by this report. Cool thing, Richard, number 2. This tells you about station 32 at this site. It was broken or had a high flow, but the cool thing here is it never ran, right? So we didn't waste thousands of gallons of water because what Jain Unity will do is it identifies a break or a high flow condition immediately, and it prevents that excessive and expensive water waste. So that's a pretty powerful report to show as well about how we're working to prevent that runaway kind of water usage.
Yeah, so a couple of questions here, Greg, and a clarification. If we get a high flow and we have a flow sensor, right? We know that. Will it shut that zone down?
Yeah, it's going to shut it down and it's going to move on to the next scheduled station that's supposed to water. But where it gets interesting is if that next consecutive station is high, we'll shut that one too. But if the third one in a row on that same watering program is high, then we're going to assume there's a mainline break. There's something else going on here. So we'll send a message to shut the controller down, shut the master valve if there is one. And of course, with our immediate reporting and alerting, we can make sure everybody who's associated with this site gets an email alert, let them know, hey, there's a big problem over there. You got to send somebody.
Yeah. So that's great, right? This is a huge money saver, right? Because we all have the story about the break near the sewer. The water went in the sewer line, nobody saw it. And 3 months later, 90 days later, we get the $30,000 water bill and we had a problem.
We do.
Yeah, so this eliminates that, right, by shutting it down.
It's funny, whenever I'm talking to folks about new sites, retrofit sites, it's all about the flow sensor, right? If you don't have a flow sensor, you're not really getting very close to, kind of true irrigation management.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to ask you to go back again, but I think it was 2 slides ago. We had a question from Bill up in Seattle, and he wants to know schedule usage, manual usage, and other usage. What are those?
Ah, Bill, love the question. So a scheduled usage, that's the schedule that the system creates and sends down to the irrigation controller. So that's just your regular program going through its regular schedule to make sure everything's watered appropriately. Manual usage is going to be anytime anybody's working at the controller, turning a station on manually, or using their app on their phone to turn a station on. So typically that's going to be on a wet check or testing, troubleshooting, that sort of thing. And then other usage is the tally of water that's lost due to a leak or a break, something like that, right? So we try to categorize it a little bit. So when you look at the report, it kind of jumps out at you about what's going on site.
Yeah, I love that, especially the manual usage. I call this the baseball coach catcher. They love to put water on the field after every game. They put the field back in good shape, and then they pour the water on, and you can really see how much extra water they pour on in the manual usage. It's part of that culture, I guess. But and then we've got another question. This is an interesting one. It's coming in from Marco. And he asked first, can we have gallon usage per zone? And I think you're showing that we can.
Indeed.
And he's saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could see, like how much water the flowers needed in that zone versus how much they were getting? And I think we can actually do that, can't we?
Yeah, we can. There's a way to use the system to, first of all, calculate what the optimum amount of water is for the zone, right? And that's in the scheduling algorithm that we have at Jain Unity. We're going to report inches of water necessary. And then you can quickly compare that to the inches of water that was actually applied, right? So when you have inches to inches comparison like that, super good way for Marco and everybody else up there to understand, hey, we overwatering, we're underwatering, we're right on, kind of how's it working?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you.
Certainly. So your anecdote about the baseball coach is funny, right? Because cool thing number 3 about measured water usage report, every time you do a wet check on site, like you can see here, you can tell your customer, look, we use 6,200 gallons of water and you pay $32 for it, your customer is probably not going to care about the $32, but they're going to be impressed that you have the details, right? The other thing why this is important, maybe, is it's kind of a check. It's proof to see that your team actually did the wet check, right? So it's kind of a powerful way to reinforce behavior and performance within the team. So we think that that's a cool report as well.
Yeah, it is. It's so great, Greg. And I have a short story here where we had a break. This wasn't the company I worked for, but another competitor had a break on a property. It rang up that $30,000 bill that we talked about. That property on their board happened to be the water agency person for that water district.
Oh, no.
He pointed out that on the maintenance contract, they were supposed to do a wet check every month. If they were doing their wet check, they would have caught the problem. They didn't. The problem persisted for 3 months, and he went back on the contractor, and that contractor had to write the check.
Wow. Wow.
So if you can show you're doing your wet checks, wow, that's really powerful.
It is. It's helpful. And then, the thing that's really interesting when a contractor organization, when they kind of go all in on data, it sort of changes how the whole team works. Everybody becomes more efficient, right? The tablets are out, the smartphones are out. People are getting away from paper, getting away from the truck, and really trying to drive value through using this data. So we think it's pretty exciting. Let's see, this one is also a cool report. So this is cool report number 4 from the measured water usage. Broken heads or high flows occur on this property, for example, Richard, about once every 8 days.
Wow.
Right, so you can get trend information that's available when you simply expand the timing of the report, right? So when I ran this for today's discussion, I set it up for May. It's like, show me the stations with high flow in May. Right, and boom, here's the list. So station 1, station 32, station 9 is on there a couple of times. You kind of get a sense for what's happening on site. And then it helps you when it comes time to redo the maintenance contract next year. It's like, hey, I got to build in a little more cash to make sure that I've got the money available from the customer to cover, fixing these high flows and breaks and stuff.
Yeah, that's such a good point, right? You can start to anticipate what's going to be coming in the next year. I love that.
It's pretty cool. And then the last one is kind of a table view, but the story it tells is this. On the right-hand side, you can see that's the leak or break data that was reported. And when my customer called me up, he's like, Greg, why do I get this little bit of water usage, right? So I looked it up, did the research, and it turns out the last valve to run at the end of the watering program was slow closing, right? So we get a little extra water there at the end of the irrigation event that's not scheduled, right? So it's going to be extra watering. And so we can report that, right? And this is another way to help contractors understand, hey, look, we got to tune this up. Why is this valve? What's going on with the water report? Kind of that kind of thing. So Richard, as you can see, many ways to use the reporting to create interest and hopefully enthusiasm with your customer. So happily, the ET Water Smart Irrigation Controller and the Jain Unity website are working together to give you the information you need to keep the property looking great. And of course, our technology also gives you knowledge and understanding that keeps you close to our customer. So we simply remind you, Richard, use data and information to strengthen your customer relationships and build your business along the way. So in closing, right, there's a couple of offers I'd like to make, Richard. So offer number 1. So if you have an ET Water Smart Controller already installed, thank you very much. But reach out to us, right? We've got fantastic territory sales rep working with our organization. Reach out and we'll schedule some time with you to go through your actual reports so you can begin to create kind of a different dialogue with your customer, right? Use the reports, extract the data, see something different or more interesting to your customer, right? Engage them to create a little more business. So offer number 2, Richard, if you don't have an ET Water Smart Controller, I know that'll change soon, but if you don't have one right now, look, we'd like to do a free water usage analysis for one of the properties you manage, right? What we can do is we have some online tools we use to help you understand how much water is appropriate for that property. And then we can tell you a little bit about the ROI to get the technology installed there. Right. So I just want to say, Richard, thank everybody for their time, you for your time. and of course, happy watering.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Great job today. I know everybody learned a lot, and we appreciate that. I also appreciate your offers. I mean, these are, this is taking your time, and that's valuable. But it's great to see that you're willing to help people learn, and especially for those that don't have a smart controller yet. They want to do that water use analysis. It's you build your return on investment calculator, and it's really easy to say, hey, in a year and a half, 2 years, we're going to be able to pay for these controllers just in the water we're saving. And after that, it's money in our pocket. That's just great. So thank you. Want to remind everybody that all our trainings, well over 100 now, are on the janesusa.com website /training. And you can find all of them there. We're also everywhere that you listen to your favorite podcasts. We know people are really enjoying that as well. And then today, if you can identify a couple of our mystery questions, the people calling in with questions, and you email me, I'll be happy to send you some cool Jain gear as a result. So anyway, take us up on our offers. Thank you again, Greg. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. If I don't talk to you, have a great Memorial Day weekend. It's a nice 3-day weekend for us. Enjoy it. And we'll see you guys back here a week from today. And next week, we have something very interesting. It's out of the water world, but something that we're hearing a lot about right now, and that is ransomware and website security. A lot of our customers may not have the website security they need. We've got an expert coming in that's going to talk about how to protect your websites, what you need to do in order to protect yourself from these ransomware people. So that's next Wednesday. It'll be interesting and a little different. So hope to see you all there. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.